Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this episode of My Life is a Typo. My guest today is none other than Viran Pandya, and I met him at a training coaching certification program a year ago, and something about his vibe instantly resonated with me, and I've just been privileged to be able to maintain, contact even though we're 13 hours apart. So live from Tokyo. I present to you, Viran. Viran, thanks so much for showing up and for being here with your awesome energy. I really appreciate you.
No, thank you so much for inviting me to this.
As we were setting up for this call, you reminded me that it was almost to the week a year ago where we virtually met.
Exactly a year. Yeah, just checking my diary.
That's perfect timing then. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking when we were scheduling this that it would have been so such a milestone week today. And also how quickly time flies, right? We got our certification and then here we are, right? Now we're both bona fide coaches.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, as you know from seeing some of my other episodes, I like to have the guests introduce themselves, and when people ask what is it that you do, you kind of have a rich story, and we can get into that. But in brief, how do you describe who you are and what you do professionally?
So who I am, I'm Chindian. My mom is Chinese from Malaysia. My dad is Indian from Kenya. They met in the UK. I was born in the UK. I only speak English. But about 10 years ago, I moved to Japan, and I've been in Tokyo for 10 years. And so what I'm doing now is that I'm coaching high achieving professionals in Japan, to basically deal with the complexities and the uniqueness of the Japanese market. So, for example, Japan's very conservative and there's a lot of conformity. And especially if you have an international background, so that's whether you're a foreigner or like you're Japanese and you've been educated or you've lived abroad, it can be quite jarring to come back into such a conservative society. So that tends to be the theme of what I coach on.
And tell me a little bit about the name of your company, of your sort of new coaching venture. I there's something there that resonated with me. I want you to kind of explain that to our viewers.
Yeah, so I called my company the Gaijin Smash. And the concept of a Gaijin Smash, it was not a term that I made up. A Gaijin Smash is basically a term, and it's quite a negative term. It's when tourists or people that live here, they pretend that they don't know Japanese or they don't understand the culture. So they
Mm,
might do, they might not, and they basically break a rule. And these can be things like, for example, eating on a train or talking on the phone on a train. If you ever come to Tokyo, you'll see that the trains are very silent.
mhm.
It might be when you're walking, everyone kind of walks in the same direction. So everyone walks on the left, but there's no one on the right. So you might do a quick run around. So there
Mm.
was this little thing I wanted to have talk about like shortcuts. But then I also wanted to sort of kind of claim Gaijin Smash for myself in terms of, Gaijin means outside, it means foreigner. Like the two characters that make up the word Gaijin is outside person. Um, and that's kind of how I've always felt no matter which country I was in. And in terms of the Smash, I like the energy of it. So I always like, well, I think there's a lot of things that happen in my past or my childhood which where um if I didn't succeed in life, it would have been fine, it would have been understandable, but I really think that I broke a lot of expectations, and so I
Mm.
wanted to sort of use that, that angle of Smash. And so that's why I called my company the Guide and Smash. So in one way, it was to attract foreigners that do know what the term means. So it was kind of a self-fulfilling, like self-selecting niche.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is, and you won't gravitate towards it. And secondly, I wanted to sort of like use it to describe myself personally as well.
And I like the idea of almost reclaiming it or messing with the like kind of maybe dropping some of the pejorative and using it for good. So it's almost like an exception to the exception, right? Like you're playing with that and you're using it for, within the context of coaching, which is ultimately, well, it can be for how do you navigate the world in a way that's aligned with your own values, whether or not those values are validated or conformed, in the greater society, that's a whole other question. But at least how can you walk through your life in alignment with the person that you want to be? And so I I love that for you, and I love that name, and I know you kind of talked about it before, and so I appreciate that you refreshed my memory because that's a really really neat concept. So another question that I like to start with is it's your morning, right? Like you're 13 hours ahead, I believe, and it's my evening, my nighttime. But what's been so perhaps you just woke up and there isn't much to say, but what is either the best part of your day been, or maybe the weekend? What's been the best part of your weekend, if that feels more relevant?
I feel like the biggest laugh that I've had was last night, and it was basically I have a son who's going to be 2 in a few months, and we'll talk about it later. But I've basically spent every day with him, working at home,
Mm,
and I get to see him develop, and he's really developing such a humor. And we were on the phone with my mum yesterday, and he like threw something, and my mum told him off via the phone. And he just looked at my mum and he went like that. And it was just the attitude that he gave my mum, who is quite a scary Chinese
yeah,
lady.
yeah.
It just made me laugh so much because, I get to see his personality and it's really cool.
That's amazing. And I don't have, kids of my own, as you know, but niece and other kids in the greater family. And so I see these little kiddos as yes, they're learners. They're constantly absorbing at the speed of light, but there are also our great teachers. They reflect us, back to ourselves, and we could learn so much from them when it comes to things like patience and play and joy and wonder and discovery, things that frankly a lot of us as adults lose sight of, or just forget or let atrophy. And part of the work that I love as a coach is like reconnecting with that childhood wonder and that child within us. So anytime I see posts, or your story like the one you just shared, or when I'm on LinkedIn and I see some of the posts you share about your kiddo or your family, it's really just it hits on so many levels. It's so wonderful to hear. So thank you for sharing a little bit of you and your family with the world. I think I certainly love it, but I'm sure, based on like there was one post that you shared that went like, I mean, that they got so many views and so much energy around it. Would you care to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we live on like the 36th floor of an apartment building, and we have a good view of of Shinjuku City, like from the balcony. And
Mm,
it's really hot in Tokyo in the summer. So it was like 35 degrees, and we couldn't go outside. So one Sunday we got like a inflatable pool, and we put it in the balcony, and we filled it with water, and I sat in the pool with my son, and we just played, and that was how we spent the day. And my wife took some photos of us, and I put two photos of that plus a sunset photo,
mm,
and then just wrote some spiel. It's basically spiel about how I hated Sundays in London, but I had a really good Sunday in Tokyo. And I'll be honest, like there's some times I'm writing on LinkedIn and a post might take me like an hour to write. And it's
yeah,
like really well, like really deeply thought out. And this one was really like a 5 minute, like, blah, 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 let's just
yeah.
send it because it's cool. Um, and yeah, it went crazy. It got like 50,000 like impressions
Wow.
in like a week or something like that. And but it hasn't been replicated since. Like it's a one-off, but I think it
Yeah.
was interesting for me to sort of just be like, and I've talked about this in posts after, like that post was just me sharing like this is nice, but there was really like no deep meaning behind it.
Mm, mm,
And so since then I had like a load of like LinkedIn like gurus like contact me like, oh, we want to help you like keep going and stuff.
yeah.
And there's all this conflicting advice out there. And kind of where I settled on for myself was I'm kind of using LinkedIn as a way to sort of process my own thoughts
Mm, mhm.
or just be thought-provoking or
Yeah.
inspiring in some way. So even if there's like if it gets like no likes, it's fine because the intention behind it was true. And if people like it, then they like it. If they don't, they don't. And it's so true about what they say about on LinkedIn. Like there's so many times that people will read stuff, they won't comment or say anything about it. But then if you meet them in person, they'll be, oh yeah, I really like that post that you write. I follow you, but yeah, I don't comment on anything. And you know who my biggest lurker is? It's
Mm-mm.
my mom.
Oh
She
wow.
She told me yesterday, she was like, "Oh, I'm really liking the stuff that you're writing about." And I was like, "When did you join LinkedIn?" She said, "Oh yeah,
That's hilarious.
recently." So
That's hilarious. Yeah.
I think LinkedIn has been, I only started being active on it for the last like 3 or 4 months. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. I can see now why it's like your favorite social media
Yeah.
platform.
And by the way, I mean many of my viewers probably know that 35 degrees is Celsius, so that's probably like mid 90s in terms of Fahrenheit. In other words, very freaking
Yeah.
hot, right? But the thing about that sort of viral moment is, virality is it's sort of hard to replicate. It sort of happens when it happens, and it's hard to replicate. But one of the dark sides of LinkedIn is you have all these sort of not lurkers. Lurkers are fine, but people like I call them the vultures, right? Like swimming around or floating around trying to sell you on this, that, and the other. And so it's actually refreshing to see people who are just authentically themselves and just comfortably who they are without the glitz and the glamour and the hype. There's something really refreshing about that. And because I've been on the platform for like 15, 16 years, I can kind of I like to think I'm a connoisseur. I can kind of smell the wheat from the chaff, separate the core the wheat from the chaff, or the good from the mediocre, or the ones who actually have substance as opposed to just fluff. But I have the same experience as you with the lurkers. It's like these some of these are my really close friends. I'm like,
Yeah.
why don't you click like? I mean, you're my buddy, right? Like why? And and sometimes they'll say things like, oh well, I don't, I just I don't have time, or I didn't think to, or I'm not somebody who interacts on LinkedIn. I just passively ingest information. Or worse, they're afraid that their boss is watching, and I'm just like, but the content was about how to communicate effectively with clients and has nothing to do with you, and it's generic, positive advice. But they're so some of them are, in environments that are not necessarily healthy, and so they're just feeling like other people or their boss is watching, and that's unfortunate, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
So
understand that as well, to be honest, because like I've worked for companies. I used to work in PR before I was
mm,
coach, and we weren't encouraged to sort of, especially in one of my companies, we really weren't encouraged to use LinkedIn in a
sure.
public because we had to be kind of in the shadows,
Yeah.
or in the background, like representing our clients and not be so visible. So yeah, I can totally see that, especially from my like former colleagues in the
Mm.
PR industry.
Yeah, I mean, and some companies are very, because they deal with a lot of sensitive or sort of confidential information, they're very, careful about what they allow their employees to divulge. So it can be tricky. Um, in some ways, coaching is a departure from your world of PR, but I'm curious about if you've ever given any thought to what are some of the, I don't know, skills or experiences that you're taking with you, right? That continue or will make you a good coach, as opposed to just thinking of it as a completely new slate that we sometimes think when we make a career change. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
This is like my third, maybe my fourth career change because
Mm,
when I was in university, so I think maybe it's easier if I give like the background from the beginning. But basically, I grew up in East London, um, and grew up in quite a rough area. My father died when I was little from alcoholism, and my mum brought me up by herself. She's a nurse, um, and also my grandparents supported me as well. And basically, I did well at school, in high school, and I got a scholarship to go to university. So I went to a university in England called York. I got a scholarship to go to California for a year, went back to York, and then I finally graduated from Oxford University. And so that path was like, okay, academia,
hmm
like really fun. I'm learning all the time. I love it. But especially during my master's degree, it was like, this is actually really lonely. And I don't really see like any social impact from this. So at the end of my first year at Oxford, I decided I'm actually going to leave the world of academia and I'm going to do something that's more real. And I became a high school teacher. So I taught history in a high school in East London, so in a similar community to mine. I did that for 3 years. And I was only like 24. And I looked young, and it was really easy to sort of like connect with my students. Um, who from similar backgrounds to me, and kind of like let's be real with them and say, look, education is basically a key. It can get you out of
Yeah.
whatever situation you're in now, and it can take you forwards. And making history relevant to them um, was like a big skill for me. So just making like the purpose or the intention visible. And I did that for 3 years, and I basically won a prize from teaching to come to Japan for 2 years. And the idea was that I would learn Japanese for the first year, and then I would work in a Japanese school. And so this is really where the second career change comes in, because what happened was I was really good at dealing with behavior in London because I could connect with these kids. And so when I came to Japan, it was like, okay, I'll learn about behavior management in Japan. But Japanese kids are like really, really tame. And the style of teaching is completely different as well. So, for example, in my classrooms, I had a lot of group tables and it's very social. Whereas in Japan, classrooms are like, one by one desks in a
Hmm.
row with a teacher at the front. And so for me, I was really thinking, like, I don't think there's much, like, there's nothing I can really learn here and take home. Um, and then I also kind of knew that I loved living in Japan. I didn't want to go back to London. So I needed to find a new job. And I told the organization that I came on the scholarship with, I was like, I actually don't want to work in a school, but I do want to stay in the public sector. Is there anywhere I can go? And it was 2015 at the time. And they were like, well, we can put you in the Olympic Committee as they're gearing up for Tokyo 2020. I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's do that.
Wow.
And I did that, and I worked in like the International Relations Bureau and then communications. And the spokesperson of the Olympics at the time was like, "You've actually got like a real good talent for like communication. So I want to introduce you to someone." So she introduced me to the head of one of the PR agencies here, and that's kind of how I went into PR. And
Wow.
then I did that for 8 years. Well, yeah, just over 8 years. And that was like government relations, that was public affairs, that was, well, I kind of settled on reputation management. So basically, when a company or an individual had made a mistake and been accused of making a mistake, had to handle that.
Hmm.
And I feel like what my skill there was really like being very straightforward with, if you did it, say sorry. And
Hmm.
if you didn't do it, let's figure out how
Yeah.
we can explain that things are not what they seem. And I would say the values there would be authenticity and just clear communication. And I think that, what it kind of all gets blended into what I'm doing now as a coach.
Hmm.
But even like how I found coaching, um, I hope I'm not rambling, but basically during
If you, I don't know what it is that we're gonna call it, but I'm listening, so I'm enjoying it. So please, more.
I about 2 years ago when my wife became pregnant, I decided I wanted to take paternity leave.
Mm.
And I took a year of paternity leave. And during that time, I kind of knew that I was done with this kind of stage of my
Hmm.
career. Um, and I had Googled something along the lines of like, I want to change careers, what should I do?
Hmm.
And it led me to an article in HBR, which then led me to a podcast. And at the end of the podcast, there was like a advertisement by the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, which was like, oh, if this like resonates with you, like check our website. And I checked it out, and it would have been like on a Monday a year ago, like this week a year ago.
Mm.
And then 3 or 4 days later, I had met
Yeah.
you on the first day of the coaching course, because it was like a lightning bolt. It was like, oh, you know what? This is actually 100% what I want to do, because
Mm.
one of the things, one of the reasons why I love teaching and why I didn't love academia or PR so much was the social element and the idea of social impact. And I tried to sort of like fill that in. I trained as a suicide phone line counselor um, during the time I was working in PR, and I had done that, but the conversation is very much like just reflective and listening. There's no forward movement from that, and I always felt like, for me personally, like selfishly, I wanted to sort of like move on. And so
Yeah.
counseling, I realized that counseling wasn't for me, but coaching was, and being 8 years as a consultant, I kind of knew how to that the best way to make a an idea stick is to make the other
Mm,
person believe that it's their idea. So
mm.
it was that insight as well that I wanted to sort of pull into my coaching.
That's awesome. And tell me, because I've only been to Japan and specifically Tokyo for all of like, I don't know, 8 hours, 10 hours on a layover, and I actually went from the airport and just saw a little bit of the city, but not enough to say I really want to go back and explore. And I was almost going to be there for the Olympics, but then because of COVID, all the tickets were canceled and all that. So that was going to be my first time in Tokyo in 2020, and it was going to be life changing. It didn't happen for me, so I don't really know much about Tokyo or Japan, other than what I hear, other than what I've seen in the media, what I've learned about, read about, what I've heard from you a little bit. But I'm curious, what made you stay, or what made you go back? What are some of the things that you appreciate about either Japan as a whole or Tokyo specifically?
So what a lot of people say here is that Japan is like amazing to live
Mm,
and not so great to work, but really
mm,
like the for me, just the benefits of living here just outweighs any of the other like rubbish that
yeah.
goes on. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just so safe.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing, I grew up in an area where crime is rife. I had multiple burglaries, like muggings, robberies. The local newspapers, there was always a paper, a story in the paper about, a young boy being stabbed or someone being stabbed in London because we don't have guns there. We have just knives.
Yeah.
But it's a real big issue. And in Japan, it was just like you don't have to worry about that. And even you're having a wife. Like if my wife wants to go out at night, and she's like, I'm gonna be home at like midnight or whatever. Yeah, fine, because there's no worry about it. If I were in London, I was like, wait, no,
Mm, mm, mm.
that's not an option
Yeah.
for you. Um, so I think just the sort of the safety of it. Um, and the order as well. Everything is just really clean and everything works. And if a train says it's going to be in 2 minutes time, it's going to be in 2 minutes time.
Oh yeah.
In London, the trains are ridiculous. They're always late.
And the
Um,
noise levels you mentioned, right, in the train, that would I have a good friend and she and I would love to just go into a train and just have it be absolutely quiet. That's our vibe. You
yeah,
you don't
and
get that in New York, not really.
I mean, it's a massive culture shock for me when I go home to London because
Mm, mm.
even if I land in the airport in the morning, because I normally get the overnight flight, I'll be like the first one on a 6 a.m. train. And so the train is empty in London, but it's just so dirty. And, I'm just like, wow. I remember that it was like culture shock. It was like, this is like the cleanest it's going to be today.
Yeah,
And it's still so dirty. And so I think, yeah,
yeah.
Japan is just really safe and clean. I think those are the two big things it's got going for them.
And those, and that kind of also speaks to what I was saying earlier, kind of living in an alignment with your values also includes being aware of what your values and your needs are. Sometimes we're so removed from what our needs are, or we live in a place that's misaligned with what we want, and that's why we're miserable. So it's, the job might be okay and the boss might be fine and the pay might be okay, but we're not in a great sort of environment for something that aligns with us or brings out the best in us. And without that awareness, I'm not saying you need coaching for everything, but I've seen that one of the many benefits of coaching for some of my clients is an awareness of like, oh, that sort of dream, city that I've wanted to move into or work in or try or explore. Well, how realistic is that? What can you do now to get to that point? What would you like to, explore about that? You don't, if you're just putting your head down, working 9 to 5, you're not going to be exploring those deeper existential questions. You're not going to give yourself that ability to explore the world quite literally. And so I am biased. I love to travel. 36 countries as of a few weeks ago. So I love sharing that bias with my clients and helping them expand their worldview as well. So one day I hope to revisit Tokyo and really get a better sense of Tokyo and explore throughout the country as well. So so you started your company. Is there like an official start date, or did it kind of gradually happen in the last few months? How would you characterize that?
I'm gonna say that the start date was March, um, because that was the day that I basically like went really public with it.
Hmm.
And that's also when I got my first clients as well. So yeah, I think I'm saying I started in March, but obviously we started the training a year ago. I made the website and the brand name like in November last year.
Hmm.
I bought
Sure.
everything on Black Friday, when we were still doing the course.
Yeah.
Um, and
Planning
then
ahead, planning ahead. Very good.
so I think March.
And then
March.
you mentioned, I think I remember you kind of after that launch, you immediately had some clients and you were talking to people. I'm curious, how do you go about sharing your wares and your services with the world? What do you do to get your name out there, other than or in addition to LinkedIn?
Well, I think at the beginning it was, as part of the training, you have to get 20 hours
Hmm.
of practice. And so I had already sort of like reached out to my network and said, hey, I'm doing 23 sessions, like who wants one? And one of the people that I coached was an old friend from university, and she had received coaching before when she was at Google. And when I did a session for her, she was like, you're actually really good. Like you're as good as the coach that I had at Google. And so my first two clients were her husband and her brother.
Hmm.
And so it started from referrals, and then since then it's kind of from everywhere really. Like I might meet
Yeah.
someone at an event and we like the vibe of each other and we do something. Then I get a few from LinkedIn who like someone might like a post and then they'll message me. Um, I did get like a lot of people come to the website as well, and we talked about this before on a call we had. I had to get your advice on this because I had a Calendly on my website,
Mm.
and people were scheduling calls with me. But
Yeah.
I really, there's a part of me that wants to just coach people that I really vibe with.
Yeah.
And there were a few people that came onto the calls. It was like, this is not a good match for both
Hmm.
of us. And so I wanted to I ended up taking down that Calendly and I've kind of made it quite hard for people to book me in that you've got
Hmm.
to send me like a message first and then I get back to you and then we talk before anything happens. But I would say that has saved me a lot of time, just like not wasting time, but like I'm talking to the people that I should be talking.
Preserving your energy. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
also like just like not wasting other people's time as well,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
if they have an issue that I don't, so I'm quite selfish with the way that I coach. I think it has to be a topic where um I'm interested in.
Hmm.
And sometimes people have goals where it's like I'm probably not the best person to talk about that.
Yeah.
So for example, if someone has like a very like financial focused goal, like I want to create passive income
Yeah.
and 10x my income for the next year. Like I'm not really the guy for you. That's not
Right.
kind of where that doesn't light me up, that conversation. If it's
Yeah.
more about like I have a goal and I know that there's something blocking me and I want to work out what it is. And the goal might be passive income, but it's the way that it's being framed now. Then I'm much more easy. It's easier
Mm.
for me to kind of catch on to that.
Fair
Um,
enough. Yeah, I'll say this. When I was starting, I would kind of initially open the floodgates and like anyone who wanted to chat with me, and I still do that in some ways, but because I have those thoughtful questions in that questionnaire, it does kind of filter out the people who are not serious, not committed. If they can't commit 5 minutes to answer this questionnaire, they're clearly not ready or not serious. And that's all it takes for me. But earlier on, when there was no filter, I would talk to people and let's say they had, fitness challenges or nutrition challenges, obviously not areas of my sort of niche expertise. But what I realized was I was still actually providing some value. Like maybe I wasn't going to be their coach for the next 3 months or 6 months or life, but I could send them a resource. I could refer them out. And now I have such a rich network of fellow coaches. Like if I have somebody who's either an expat or is going to Japan or live there or is leaving, I wouldn't think twice. I would send them your way. Like it's so nice to be able to be that initial point and just lend them an ear and then send them off to somebody like you who can actually take really good care of them. So I also see my role. Yes, I want to always work with like the my favorite types of clients. I have the niches that I love, but I've also kind of evolved to see I can provide value even if I'm funneling you away from me, even if I'm referring you out there. So that's how I've sort of, I don't know, reframed that as it's not a failure of mine. It's still I'm still maybe that person, maybe this is their first experience with a coach, and I lent them an ear, and I will now prime them for how to work with a coach. So yeah, I have a sort of an interesting and robust kind of thought process on that. Like I don't think it's a complete waste, but I also, as I get busier, I really want to focus in on those niche clients because of my energy, my time, money, all of that. So I can appreciate that you were able to get there much faster than I did. Took me
I just
years.
think it's just it like you know, the coaching, I love it. I really do love
Yep.
it. And I think one of the things I
Yeah.
love about it is that you're just constantly learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like a lack of confidence, but you know, I'm very aware and I'm very open that I'm a new coach and
Mm-hmm.
that I haven't really like figured out exactly like what my style of coaching is yet. Like I got told by a client recently, like, oh, I've had therapy before and you're very like therapeutic. And it's almost like you know, I Googled, they mentioned like solutions focused therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I Googled it and I read it, I read some like journals about it. I was like, oh my God, that is very similar to what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have a sort of I'm not a therapist basically. You know,
Sure.
it's
Yep.
still like coaching and forward focused. But there is a
Yes.
part of me that is like when there's a client and they have an issue or there is a vibe where I'm like, actually, I don't think I have enough experience to support you in the way that you need to
Sure.
be supported. That is
Yep.
where that has been a big blocker for me in terms of like we probably maybe now is not the right time for us to work together. I'm very open with that. And
Mm-hmm.
as you say, like to have people to refer, other coaches to refer to, it's an industry unlike any other that I've been part of because they're really, I think when I came in, I was expecting quite a competitive industry,
Mm-hmm.
but really like 99% of the coaches that I meet, they're so open and willing to meet and willing to share. And, you know, even the conversations that you have with me, it's like you're so
Yep.
open with your knowledge. And I just find that to be I feel like all coaches are similar to that, and that's something that I aspire to be as well as I sort of continue to learn and like hone my craft, and it's been
Yeah.
really enjoyable so far.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think as a community, the coach, at least the coaches that I gravitate towards and learn from and have fun with, tend to be open-minded, tend to be honest and transparent, tend not to be desperate, tend to be more of a sort of collective communal sharing of knowledge, sharing of resources, referring to each other. That's what resonates with my values, right? I don't like the cutthroat thing. Like I used to work in industries that had a little bit of that, and I serve clients who are in very sort of cutthroat industries, and I support them through that. But it's just not my vibe. I don't want to spend decades of my life in that world because it drains my soul. It really does, and I know that now that I'm almost 40. I don't want to live my life like that, and that's an intention. That's a decision that came to me through a lot of call it failures, mistakes, or pain.
Yeah, I mean, I totally resonate with that. I mean, I think that's, you know, this is the first time that I'm really working for myself, and just having, just being able to sort of choose how you live it's been great. I really have to say like it's been the best year of my life since I started coaching. Um, just because I've been able to spend time with my son like every day. Um, the conversations that I have with my clients are always inspiring. Whether I'm learning from them about a completely different industry. Like I had one of my first clients was a venture capitalist, and
Mm,
I never knew anything about that world,
sure,
and it's
sure.
just the value that she got from it, from just breaking it down for me. Just I actually don't understand what this
Yeah.
is. Can you just like really break it down for me? The process of her breaking it down and be like, I forgot the basics, and now that I've broken it down for you, I can sort of see where the gaps are in my
Hmm.
approach to this goal. And those, I remember that call because it was like, shit, I've got like a VC coming in. I don't know anything about the industry,
Yep.
what's it going to be like. And at the end of it, I was like, that was like the best. That was like
That's awesome.
so cool. And I think that buzz is something that I don't think I've had it since I had like a really good lesson when I
Mm.
was a teacher like 10 years ago. And so yeah, really, I just really enjoyed um all of the conversations that I'm having as a coach so far. And there was one thing that kind of sprung to mind as we were talking about the coaching industry, and it was about how different coaches have different approaches.
Hmm.
And one thing, it's when you said open-minded, and I think one thing that I've found it a little bit difficult to do is um, to deal with like I do find that some conversations around coaching are they don't resonate with me. And so, for example,
Hmm.
this might be in terms of like toxic positivity. It might be in terms of like the use of personality tests at the beginning, or
Sure.
using personality tests as part of a program, um, and even things like I'm doing like the PQ course, the positive intelligence
Hmm.
course,
Sure. Sure.
and that for me like it's just not vibing with me.
Yeah.
Uh, this idea of like how everyone fits into a certain box or a certain label, the idea that everyone's got something wrong with them that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
fixed, is something that it's not. I don't know what my philosophy is yet, but I can. It's easier for me to sort of say, "Oh, that's not it."
Mm-hmm.
And when there is something that fits in, is like, okay, let me take this. And so, yeah, I'm on this kind of like learning journey, and that's one of the things from coaching where um, it's been not a struggle, but it's been something that I'm definitely like grappling with.
Yeah. And I hear you. I mean, on the personality assessment stuff, I've actually prior because of my prior sort of roles in HR, I'm very familiar with a lot of different personality assessments. I think they're useful, maybe, but I don't ever really use them in my own one-to-one coaching, and I don't need to because my clients are already high achieving, super smart, hyper aware. They know that they are people pleasers, or they know that they're aggressive, or that they're perfectionist. They've known this for decades. Knowing it is not going to change them. Taking another test and it's like a cosmopolitan test, like, oh, this is the personality I have. I know this already. That's why I'm so excited that it's reflecting the truth. But I know this, so I don't I understand that they may be useful for certain people, but it's a tool and it may be useful for some, but it may not be necessary for others. So yeah, finding that style and finding how you want to coach, your style, your flavor of coaching, it's one of the joys, one of the many joys. There are certainly challenges that come with coaching and being sort of a solopreneur, but one of the many benefits or pluses is that you get to define it kind of your flavor and your style in whatever is working, right? Whatever's working with your clients, whatever's moving you, whatever's inspiring and energizing you. So there's a lot of fun to be had, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one
So
of the things a personality test, just I think one of the things that I don't like about it in Japan is that if you apply to a company, a lot of the big companies in Japan use personality tests as part of the application process.
yeah,
And for me, it's like when it's not based on like actual scientific like rigor,
yeah.
I don't know. I just think there's too much value given to them. And so
Yeah,
yeah,
subjective, or it could get tricky with legal stuff. And I mean, I'll say this though, that there are certainly personality tests that are absolutely rooted in academia and then scientific rigor. So there are ways to kind of utilize them with a grain of salt. But when it comes to my coaching one-on-one, I've had incredible successes with my clients, and it's never been a formal part. Some clients will ask for them, and I have tools I can send them, but it's not like, hey, before I talk to you, I need you to take this assessment. That hasn't been my game, or it hasn't been the way I've operated. That said, as a coach, I'm also really flexible. So if there's a corporate client or some client that wants this or wants that, I may be able to meet them halfway in certain respects. They can kind of bend to a point, but as long as I'm not breaking, as long as I am still able to have that integrity and be effective in the way that I coach, which is why there's tons of coaches and not everybody's for everyone else. So there is that opportunity to find the clients that are just going to run with you and resonate with you, and that's all that matters. That's it.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's what I'm hoping for.
I love I mean, there's so many gems that you shared, and I just love to hear that you said like, hey, this was one of the best years of my life, and like that's all that's music to my ears. Like, would that all of my clients were there, right? Would that all of my clients were in jobs where they were thriving? Would that all of my clients were in that mindset? And that is why we've got our work cut out for us, because there are lots of people who are not. I mean, they're not always miserable, right? Some people are kind of a little bit, they're subpar, or they're operating a little less than they would like to be. They know they could do better. They know that they could thrive. They know that they could be healthier, more aligned with their industries. So, there's work to be done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I think, I think you're probably the same. There's not pressure, but there's definitely a part of me which is like, I have now complete freedom over my time, and how am I going to use it? And it's about being intentional and being aware of what's important to you. And so for me, it was like health. So I get to go to the gym a lot.
mm,
My family, so I spend time with my wife and my son at home. Learning, I'm like constantly reading. I'm like having conversations, and like a social aspect. There's a social
yeah,
aspect to my work still. And so if those are my four values, that's how I'm spending my day. There's no reason for me to be unhappy with that. There's no reason for me to be drained because there's none of my energy that's going towards this like
yeah,
faceless corporate entity that has no interest in like who I am.
right.
Um, and that's
Well,
yeah, that's kind of where I think a lot of the happiness is coming from. And even if it's not happiness, then it's just like a lack of like despair. I don't know, like to compare
hmm.
this part of my career to my previous part of this, there's no like existential, like what am I doing with my life? Like, does this really matter? Like if I wasn't here today, like would the world stop turning
Yeah,
for
yeah,
whatever projects I'm working on? Not if this project didn't exist, what would happen? Like nothing. So
yep.
there's this idea of like how important is the work that you're doing as well. And then that's something that I'm definitely grateful for this year.
And I'm grateful for you. I think this would be like this is such a high note. This is such a beautiful note for us to end on. I knew that this was gonna run long. I don't want to say run over because I really don't have an end time, but I just knew that you and I were gonna be shooting the breeze, and I'm sure we could keep talking for hours and hours on end. But I want to be respectful of your time, and I also see myself winding down because it's almost 9 o'clock my time. I really just wanted to express my gratitude for the serendipity because when I met you, I think I was actually going to go to an earlier cohort, but with the scheduling last minute, I ended up in your cohort. So it was all very, serendipitous that I had the pleasure of meeting you in that cohort and just being your friend and your buddy and sharing knowledge, learning from you as well. It's been a pleasure, and I'm just grateful that our paths continue to cross. So thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts or questions before I let you go for the day?
No, I mean honestly, I love you, man. Like, I just think like everything that you do is great, and all of these videos as well. There's so much, not just from the guests, but also from you as a host, and like there's just so many good ideas out of these videos. So hopefully, I've done some credit to that as well, and I can add something there. But yeah, I'm just really thankful for all the support you've provided me along the way and the opportunities that you continue to provide me. So yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful and empowered start of your day, really, for you. And I look forward to being in touch. Appreciate you, man. Take good
Yeah,
care.
bye bye.